Well, good evening, everybody, and welcome to our first post-trade deadline edition of the Warmies. Mike Gould, your man again this evening, Saturday night. It's hockey night in Canada at the Scotiabank Saddledome, and it is the Calgary Flames getting set to take on the Carolina Hurricanes. Bit of a later start tonight, 8 p.m., so a bit of a later start for the Warmies. Glad to have you with us in the Sports Interaction studio. Every game is your game when you bet with Sports Interaction. From puck drop to overtime, bet with Canada's homegrown sports book. 19 plus, please play responsibly. And we will kick off today's edition of the Warmies by looking, as usual, at our opening betting lines from the good folks at SI. The Flames against the Hurricanes. And as you might expect, the Flames are heavy underdogs in this one at plus 170. The Hurricanes kicking things off at minus 210. They're one of the top teams in the Eastern Conference, so there you go. That's what you might expect. The over-under set at 6, the spread at 1.5. Actually, the over on the spread is favored. Pretty even money on the over-under, actually. It's looking pretty good there. Minus 120 on the under, plus 100 at the over. So pretty solid lines there over at Sports Interaction. Definitely feels like a game that the Carolina Hurricanes have the upper hand in, being the number one seed in the Eastern Conference. Carolina at 40, 16, and 6 with 86 points in 62 games this season. They have won 6 consecutive games, and now they go up against a Flames team that is definitely not at the same strength level that it was prior to the trade deadline. We'll get into a lot of the stuff. It's been a busy week, as you know. It's been a busy week for me. It's been a busy week for everybody. So I'm out here in Canmore, Alberta this weekend, just spending a little time away from home. We'll be watching this one with a roaring fire right behind me on the other side, I suppose. Just nice to get some time away, but still, the Warmies alarm beckons no matter where I am. If I was in Cabo or whatever, I think it's just one Cabo. I would be still doing this show. I got a dog who's hanging out with me who just grabbed a Kleenex, so that's maybe not great. But in any event, we're just doing what we can here on the Warmies. The real Doug, not to be confused with any other Dougs, in the chat saying tonight is the night for more McKenna points, and maybe it is, but we'll see. The Flames, they have some new faces tonight. It'll be Ryan Strome's Flames debut. It'll be Oli Mata's Flames debut against the Carolina Hurricanes at the Dome. We're still waiting for official confirmation as to what the lines might look like. But really, hard for it to look a whole lot worse than it did the other night when the Flames got stomped by the Ottawa Senators in their final pre-deadline tune-up at the Saddledome. Yasmin, I'm not sure if we got it. But if we do have the preliminary line combinations from over at Daily Faceoff, let's have a look at them for the Flames as we sort of head into today's game. It's that top line that we have come to know and love over the course of the season with Backlund, Coleman, and Coronado. No Blake Coleman trade before the 3 p.m. Eastern Friday deadline. Not entirely surprising. The sense that I get is that the Flames had plenty of desirable offers for Kadri and Coleman. They obviously had to make a choice as to who they wanted to retain salary on. And I think what really pushed them in a certain direction was the fact that Nazem Kadri was really, really insistent upon wanting to go. And, you know, I think they made the call in that Coleman might have been a little bit closer to being okay either way. Whereas with Kadri, it was a direct appeal to the powers that be in the Flames organization saying, look, it's time. I've played over half the contract that I signed with you, and I'm getting up there, and now it's time. Ryan Strome, we're expecting to maybe play with Connor Zary and Joel Farabee on the Flames' second line. Hard to say for certain where exactly Strome will line up. Penny, it's okay. Just chatting with our little dog here. Strome with Farabee and Zary again. Strome will wear number 22 with the Flames in his debut. The Flames will be wearing their Blasty jerseys for the final time this season in tonight's game. Morgan Frost with Igor Sharangovich and Marty Pospisil. We saw Matvei Gridin on this line. We saw Pospisil playing center on this line, and they were the ones who combined for the only goal in the game against Ottawa. It was Pospisil from Gridin and Sharangovich. And now, with Gridin down the American League, Frost will slide in right there. And then Johnny Beecher with Ryan Lomberg and Adam Klapka. In recent days, weeks, we've been seeing one of Lomberg and Pospisil in and out of the lineup, and now they both get in with Matt Gridden down in the American Hockey League for one game so that he can be eligible for the American Hockey League playoffs. We should mention as well, the Wranglers are currently playing against the Coachella Valley Firebirds in an American League game down at the Acrisure Arena in Palm Desert. Last I checked, it was 1-0 in favor of Coachella. Gridden is playing in that game, and also another forward, Brennan Othman, is playing in that game for the Calgary Wranglers, wearing number 28 in his Flames professional organization debut. So some interesting notes there on the forward side. On the defensive side of things, another Flames debut tonight. It'll be Olli Mata. We expect lining up actually with Zane Parekh on the second pairing for the Calgary Flames. Olli Mata wearing number 3. The first player to wear number 3 for the Calgary Flames since Connor Mackey. So he'll go with Parekh. We expect Kuznetsov with Pahal, and then Kevin Ball with Zach Whitecloud on the top pairing for the Calgary Flames. And on the subject of Zach Whitecloud, today's game at the Scotiabank Saddledome is a little bit extra special. It is Indigenous Celebration Night at the Saddledome, and this is fantastic. Yasmin, I know we've got this. These jerseys, excellent. I love the Seven Chiefs hat that Zach Whitecloud is wearing. He recently hosted a sort of public skate at Seven Chiefs. Super cool facility, super cool player for the Calgary Flames, and just by all accounts, a super neat guy. They're doing a auction for their Indigenous Celebration designed jerseys that are all signed by the players. So you can get your bids in at that link if you wish. It is super cool. And I think it was said on the live deadline show, and I think it bears repeating, no chance in all likelihood that Mackenzie Weegar gets traded as soon as he did if Whitecloud doesn't come in and play amazingly on a bad team in his first 10 or so games as a member of the Calgary Flames. Whitecloud's been really punished with some tough matchups, and he has responded admirably with this Calgary Flames team. His underlying numbers are fantastic, and it really is a testament to the quality of player he is, but also the quality of individual he is, that he's able to roll with the punches and make this transition as seamless that it has been. And a player who I just think is going to be a quality Calgary Flame for as long as he's here. And, that remains to be seen exactly how long he'll be here. But he's got some years on his contract. He's not an old player by any means, and certainly a player who I love watching with the Calgary Flames on a nightly basis. Our buddy Ryan Pike has the lines for the Calgary Flames, and I'll just read them off of my second screen here. They're a little bit different than what we expected, but not that much different, I would say. They've actually split up the Coleman, Backlund, Coronado line. They've put Sharon Govich back there. We saw that earlier this season. Coleman with Frost and Farabee, Zary with Strome and Pospisil, and Lomberg with Beecher and Klapka. And then, of course, actually, you know what? They are having Olli Mata skate with Braden Pahal in the warmups. So we were expecting, based on some stuff that we heard earlier today, that would be Mata with Parekh, but it is Mata with Pahal, and then Kuznetsov, Parekh, and Ball with Zach Whitecloud. So there's a look at the official lineup, courtesy of our buddy Ryan Pike over at FlamesNation.ca. It'll be Dustin Wolf between the pipes for the Calgary Flames this evening against Carolina. Wolf this year is 17-23-3 with an .899 save percentage with the Calgary Flames. We saw Devin Cooley the other night against the Ottawa Senators. Wouldn't be surprised if they just alternate the guys the rest of the way. They've both been pretty good of late. So there you go. Dustin Wolf going up against Brandon Busey for the Carolina Hurricanes between the pipes. We'll have a look, speaking of the Hurricanes, at their lineup. It is a good lineup, as evidenced by the fact that they are number 1 in the East. Didn't really do a whole lot at the trade deadline, though. We'll have a look at their forwards first. Penny, it's okay. Penny's just cheering for the Flames. Dog over here just going wild. It's Canmore. You got to be ready to party. Let's have a look at the Carolina Hurricanes lineup if we have it. It is Sebastian Aho with Seth Jarvis and Andrei Svechnikov on line number 1. Logan Stankoven centering Jackson Blake and Taylor Hall on line number 2. Jordan Stahl with Jordan Martinook and Nikolai Ehlers on line number 3. When you have Ehlers on the third line, it is definitely a luxury. And then our old buddy Mark Jankowski between Eric Robinson and William Carrier on line number 4. Worth noting, not looking like it'll be the Carolina debut for Nick Delorier, who was really the only big piece of note that the Hurricanes acquired yesterday, and wasn't really that big a piece. They gave up a 7th-round pick to get Nick Delorier from the Philadelphia Flyers, but not expecting to see him against the Flames this evening. On the defensive side of things for the Carolina Hurricanes, Jacob Slavin with Jalen Chatfield, Keandre Miller skating alongside Sean Walker. And then on the third pairing, we have it listed as Gostisbehere with Alexander Nikishin. I'm not entirely certain, though, if Gostisbehere will actually be playing in this evening's game, as he was injured in the last game that Carolina played just last night. So my expectation is it'll actually be Mike Riley on the third pairing for the Hurricanes in this evening's game. So that's the only change that we're expecting with no Gostisbehere. Mike Riley will draw in his place for the Carolina Hurricanes. And as we mentioned, it is Bussy for the Hurricanes in tonight's game. He has had an incredible run with the Hurricanes this season. The 27-year-old quote-unquote rookie, 25-3-1 with a .903 save percentage is Brandon Bussy. So if you're going to bet on the Flames losing tonight's game, well, Brandon Bussy being between the pipes does not make their task any easier when you're facing a goaltender with that kind of record. This is interesting. So some games in progress. The Utah Mammoth were up 4-2 pretty late in their game against the Columbus Blue Jackets, but goals by Adam Fantilli and Mason Marchment have tied it up at 4 late in the third, and Columbus is now on the power play. So that's an interesting game in the Western, well, I guess the West and East, but in the Central and Metro divisions. LA was up in their game against the Montreal Canadiens. They were up 3-2. Montreal has just scored 2 quick goals to take a 4-3 lead at the Crypto.com Arena in Los Angeles. Then a couple of games that have gone final, and these, I think, are some really good outcomes for the Flames. Winnipeg takes Vancouver to overtime, and the Jets win it 3-2 off an OT winner by Josh Morrissey. Good to see him back in the lineup. The Canucks do get a point, and the Jets get 2. So the Jets now a full 7 points up on the Flames. It wasn't long ago that the Flames were behind the Jets, and now there's a 7-point spread between those two teams. So definitely a good outcome for the Flames on the out of town tonight. Buffalo wins again. They are red hot. They've won 6 in a row. Josh Doan with his 19th deciding that one. Jux JC, I think in the chat, was mentioning how Dan Vladar stonewalled the Pittsburgh Penguins in the shootout tonight. Indeed the case. 4-3 the final score. The Flyers win it. Trevor Zegras with the overtime winner. And the Flyers still sort of in the hunt out in the Eastern Conference. The Pittsburgh Penguins getting another point, though, out of that one as they look to lock down an improbable playoff spot. Boston beats Washington 3-1. The Devils, I actually watched this game, and pray for me that I did. It wasn't very fun to watch. The Devils double up the New York Rangers 6-3 in a horrible, horrible game. And the Maple Leafs lose again, 5-2 at the hands of the Tampa Bay Lightning, who got Corey Perry back, and he proceeded to score the game-winning goal for the Lightning in his first game back with his old team. So we'll keep an eye on this Utah-Columbus game, probably the most intriguing one of the evening so far. But yeah, good to see the Canucks picking up a point now, just 9 points back of the Calgary Flames. We'll see. Maybe the Canucks can go on a bit of a run. We'll have to wait and see how things play out here. Some good questions, some good comments in the chat. We encourage folks to get in their super chats as well to benefit the youth centers of Calgary. And this is one that I kind of like. Mr. Watts, 69, asking, Mike Gould, what would a Beecher extension look like? You know, it's funny. I would not have even considered extending John Beecher after the first number of games that we saw him play with the Flames. I've actually really, really liked John Beecher since the return from the Olympic break. I think he's been a very good number 4 center for this Flames team. And I was ready to totally write this player off. But he's young. He's 24 years old and a good looking waiver claim for me. Kind of reminds me of when the Flames picked AJ Greer off waivers from the Bruins a few years ago. And he wasn't a guy who I was really, that high on. Turned into being a pretty good fourth liner for that Flames team, goes to Florida, wins the Stanley Cup there, and was a guy who was viewed at this year's trade deadline as maybe being a good trade chip for Florida. So with Beecher, I can kind of understand wanting to maybe see him a little bit more. That being said, the Flames have some other guys who they need to get into the lineup, and he's certainly not a foundational piece or anything like that. I just think that there's maybe an opportunity for him to be a little bit more than what he's proven in his NHL tenure with Boston and Calgary so far. The other thing to note tonight is that Victor Olofsson, the other veteran player the Flames acquired in the trade deadline lead up, is not here yet. So Victor Olofsson, coming over from Colorado, will not play for the Flames this evening. He will become the first player in Flames history to wear number 95 when he does make his Flames debut. We expect probably next week. But for now, he's not yet available to the Flames. Strome and Mata are both out on the ice. Logan Gordon from 960 just tweeted out a couple of photos of them in their new Flames jerseys. Kind of cool to see them wearing the Blasty jerseys. And we'll see how they look tonight. Olofsson is another guy who's on an expiring contract. He's a pending UFA. Quite frankly, I don't expect the Flames to re-sign him. Primarily just because, on top of the fact that there's no guarantee that he'll even want to stick around. I mean, he's been in Colorado and Vegas. He wants to play on a winning team. But also, the Flames, by the time that next season starts, the spot that Olofsson currently occupies, probably Jonathan Huberdeau takes it back. Or Sam Honzek will be back from his injury. So I just don't think it makes a whole lot of sense. The Flames have a lot of wingers as it stands. Olofsson included in that deal just to make the money work. And quite frankly, I think had they made that deal a little bit earlier, like in the week, for example, they might have flipped Victor Olofsson. But because it was so, down to the wire, there wasn't a market available. So that's one that I don't see. I do think they will extend Ryan Lomberg at some point. I mean, Conroy has made such a mantra out of not wanting to let guys leave for nothing. But by the same token, I think Lomberg doesn't really fit neatly into that. He's closer to a guy like Dan Vladar than, a Goudreau or a Tkachuk. But still, Lomberg, a very popular guy. They were, never really all that close to trading him as far as I know. And I would expect to see Ryan Lomberg stick around beyond this year. So that even takes a little bit more space away from a guy like Victor Olofsson or even a Johnny Beecher potentially. Because also you got Marty Pospisil still around for the next 3 seasons. You've got Connor Zary still around. Morgan Frost is a player they're going to need to make a decision on, but you've got him and Strome signed for next year. So there's a lot of bodies and not a lot of space. I have a saying that a contending team has all-stars and no depth, and a rebuilding team has all depth and no stars. And that's sort of the way that it pans out with the Flames right now, where they've got 16, 17, 18, 19 forwards who you might want to see in the NHL right now. And they've got 0 top-line forwards. That's really where it comes down to. Now, I will say, and going to this comment from Ascending Horizons, Strome being a right-hand center is huge. I agree. It's a player that, you want to have, and it helps make up for the loss of Nazem Kadri. And you gave up almost nothing to get him, a 7th-round pick. But here's the other aspect of it as well, is that the Flames would probably have been active in the free agent market this summer to acquire a center as sort of a pump and dump type player. Kind of like what they tried to do with Anthony Mantha before he got hurt. Kind of what the Flyers did with Christian Dvorak this year, giving him a 1-year deal at big money. Now, Dvorak's a little younger, and so the Flyers ended up re-signing him. But Strome will be 33 next season. There's no way the Flames are going to sign him to a long-term deal like the Flyers did. So what I expect here is the Flames paid a 7th-round pick to get ahead of the UFA market. So instead of having to go out and convince a guy to come to Calgary on a 1-year, $5 million deal, well, now you can pay a 7th, get that guy who has top 5 pick pedigree, who has 7 40-point seasons in his career, and now you put yourself in a position where next trade deadline, when you have 2 salary cap retention spots that open up, you can retain on Ryan Strome and send him to a good team. Maybe you send him back to the New York Islanders. You send him back to the Oilers. You send him back to the Rangers if they're better. I don't know. You send him back to one of those teams for a good return, maybe a 2nd or a 3rd round pick. It reminds me of Nick Bjugstad. Nick Bjugstad, of course, is the consummate journeyman in the National Hockey League. And a couple of years ago, we see Arizona trade Bjugstad to Edmonton for a 3rd round pick and Michael Kesselring, who ended up being a great find for Arizona, and they later flipped him to Buffalo. And then Bukestad signs right back with the Coyotes the next year, goes with them to Utah. So that's the sort of thing the Flames can maybe do as they replenish their cupboards here. Now, over at Daily Faceoff, I had a piece that went live earlier today. I encourage you to go check it out, maybe in the intermission, one of the intermissions of today's game, because I think it's a good read. It's about how Craig Conroy has restocked the Calgary Flames prospect and pick cupboards to a level that we have never, ever seen before with the Calgary Flames. We have seen the Flames in their history before Conroy took over make multiple first-round picks in the single draft once. They only ever have done it once before Conroy took over. And now Conroy has put them in a spot where they can do it in 5 consecutive years. That, to me, is absolutely just staggering. It is something that he should be really proud of. The Flames should be really proud of. And the volume of draft picks is just an incredible luxury for this organization. If we are looking at the Flames in 24 months as having made multiple top 5 draft picks, maybe even multiple top 3 draft picks, and they are able to even maybe use some of those excess picks to reacquire pieces to help them win, add as you are heading into the new arena in 2-3 years, boy, the Flames have given themselves tangible capital at the expense of losing players who weren't going to be factors when they were good again anyway. It's the sort of thing that we should really be celebrating, and it is an exciting time to be a fan of the Calgary Flames, I would say, just with the future being so well stocked, so well prepared for by Craig Conroy. So I think he deserves a ton of credit for that. It's like there's little prizes that are going to be unrolled by the Calgary Flames. Sort of like if you were to play Roll Up the Rim to Win over at Tim Hortons. It is year 40 of Roll Up to Win with Tim Hortons. It is a Canadian institution, a tradition, a yearly event that gets people talking. And this episode of the Warmies is brought to you by Tim Hortons. If you feel something exciting in the air, roll-up season is back until March 22nd. So don't wait until it's over to realize you forgot to play. For more info, check out timhortons.ca/rollup. Roll up to win only at Tim's. Once again, that is timhortons.ca/rollup. I mean, have you seen how expensive gas is right now? Well, I won I think it was 5 cents off a liter. No, I think it was 10 cents off a liter at Journey Rewards. So I was able to drive out to Canmore last night, filled up on the way, got a huge discount on my gas just from playing roll up. So there's tons of great prizes. It's fantastic. So go give it a shot and get your chance to win. Before we get to more questions, let's have a look at one of our props. I think I have a same game parlay from Sports Interaction for today's game, Flames versus Hurricanes. I think Yaz has got it in the holster somewhere. Here we go. A couple of same game parlays. One at plus 210, the other at plus 220. Again, this over at sportsinteraction.com/FlamesNation. The first one, they're all based on the Hurricanes winning this game. Hurricanes game plus Sebastian Aho anytime goal score. That one pays out at plus 210. And then Hurricanes win plus Seth Jarvis anytime goal score. So a couple of good centers there for the Carolina Hurricanes. And if you think either of them will score in this game, well, you've got a pretty good option there on a couple of good same game parlays from the folks over at Sports Interaction, where you can get on the action with parlay boosts, live betting, and easy deposits and payouts. Bet now at sportsinteraction.com/FlamesNation. 19 plus, please play responsibly. You know, there were so many interesting moves at this year's trade deadline, and I really do think the Flames are the number one winners of this year's trade deadline. Even though they weren't a buyer, they were a seller, but they managed to sell in a way that I think stocked them up in a way that very few teams have been stocked up in the last few years. It really hasn't occurred to this extent in a long, long time. That Kadri deal is a huge moment in the trajectory of the Flames organization. They have really moved the guys who I didn't expect to move. But the thing is, because they've moved these guys, now their next step is to move the guys who we've expected to move all along. So in an essence, they're going to get all their business out of the way. Most of the selling, we've gotten to the point where most of the selling has been done. The Flames have torn this down. Toffoli is done. Hannafin is done. Lindholm is done. Anderson is done. Tanev and Zadorov are done. Markstrom's gone. Mangiapane is gone. Uyghur and Kadri are gone. And it's going to be Coleman gone next. Frost and Strome will be gone. And from there, once we get to that vantage point, it really doesn't take very long for the adding to begin. It really doesn't. I mean, I use the Utah-Arizona example just because it's the freshest in my mind. It is the cleanest example that we've seen of late of a team executing a teardown to this extent and then subsequently beginning to add. And the length of time between the Coyotes trading Jacob Chikrin and Utah adding Mikhail Sergachev, even though the Sergachev trade was not a huge, favorite of mine, I didn't think they did all that well in it. But the length of time between those two deals was 16 months, right? It really didn't take very long. And obviously, there were other factors at play there. The Coyotes and Mammoth already had Keller in place, Cooley in place, right? But the Flames have pieces in place too. They have a goalie in place. They have, in my opinion, a future top six center of the future. Well, a future of the future. A future top six center in Cole Reshny in place. They have Matt Begridden, who looks like a top six winger, in place. So they're going to have opportunities here to begin adding very, very quickly. Of course, the draft is the most opportune time to add, quote unquote. But once these pieces become part of the organization, it's not long after that before we see the Flames on the other side of trades that we have seen being made. They are the ones who trade for the defenseman, not trade away the defenseman. And, they have to be cautious because as we saw the last time the Flames were in this situation, they might have gotten ahead of themselves a little bit in trading for Dougie Hamilton. But still, there are opportunities to be precise and deliberate in the way that you build. And the selling, the teardown, the rebuild, we're pretty far along. We're further along than I thought we would be at this point, maybe a year ago. If you told me a year ago that we'd be sitting here in March 2026 with Anderson, Kadri, Uyghur all gone, Huberdeau is hurt. Who knows what'll be his future when he comes back? The 2026 NHL draft feels like a watershed moment for the Calgary Flames because it allows them to have a true path forward, unencumbered by what has come before. A true fresh start. For all that has been said about Mackenzie Weegar, Nazem Kadri, Jonathan Huberdeau maybe being a part of the solution as the Flames enter their new arena, I think it's a better outcome for the Flames to just have a totally fresh start, not even have those guys be in the mind once the new rink opens. Huberdeau's future outcomes notwithstanding. We'll see what happens there with him. Just wrapping this up here on the Warmies. Puck drop just past the top of the hour here. We do want to mention as well one more thing, that this entire show is a presentation of Truck Month. Truck Month over at GMC. It's your opportunity to get into a 2026 GMC Sierra 1500 Pro Graphite Crew Cab at 0% financing for 72 months. You're getting a 2-inch factory lift with off-road suspension, a powerful 5.3-liter V8 engine, and a commanding presence that demands attention. Hurry in to go see the Sierra 1500 Pro Graphite Crew Cab in person and take advantage of Truck Month before it ends. Boy, oh boy. I was saying on a previous show, Connor Geeky's kind of like a truck out in Tampa Bay. He's a guy who I'd love to get for the Flames. Of course, the Lightning didn't do a ton at this deadline. They got Corey Perry back, but they didn't do a ton. I still wonder if we get to the draft, 2026, June, and Connor Geeky, Blake Coleman, that deal that I said, I wonder if it might still make sense. We'll see. In any event, lots to get through until that point. 21 more games for the Calgary Flames. Tonight, it's their first post-deadline matchup. It is Ryan Strome and Ole Mata playing their first games as members of the Calgary Flames. Here we go. Enjoy tonight's game, folks. For everybody over at Sports Interaction, at GMC, at Tim Hortons with Roll Up the Rim to Win, with the Youth Centers of Calgary and the Super Chats, we really appreciate everybody tuning in. It'll be myself. It'll be Kent Wilson. It'll be our producer, Yasmin, again, for the post-game show, the afterburner, after the final buzzer sounds at the Saddledome this evening. Until then, thank you so much for tuning in. My name is Mike Gould. This has been another edition of The Warmies.
Hey, buddies. Thanks for watching. We appreciate it. Also, if you could throw in a like and subscribe, it does help us out with what it is we are doing. And check out more at flamesnation.ca.